Hello, everyone. I believe we've got everything started. Please let me know if there's any issues. I'm Laura Goldman. I am a registered dietitian nutritionist, and as I'm sure the reason you're here is because of the email that was sent out, and you're here to see me. This is a new feature that Premier Weight Loss is starting, and you have decided to join the very first one with me. We are planning on doing this weekly, either at 6 p.m. or at noon, and the times will be displayed in the invitations. And a little bit about myself. I am currently a consultant dietitian, and I also am a renal dietitian. I work at dialysis facilities. And tonight I'm really thrilled to be presenting to you, which tonight, of course, you know the topic is protein, the building blocks for success. And it's a short little discussion, and afterwards we'll open it up for a little Q&A for you to ask your questions that you may have. So without further ado, let's get this started. So again, as we talked about, the title is Protein, the Building Blocks for Success. Something I want to have as essentially our mantra is to remember the quality of your calories matters. And that's one of the reasons why we're putting protein as the focus for this very first presentation. So what we'll cover tonight is actually what is protein? Why is it important? How much we may need? And where you can find it. These seem like very basic and simple concepts, but I wanted to start out with this primer just so we can get the basics down. So what is protein? Well, it's one of the big three nutrients, you may have heard the term macronutrients, that our bodies need to function. It's a necessary part of your entire body, muscles, bones, hair, cells, skin, and on and on. Also, it can be used as energy, so calories. Now, proteins are made up of amino acids, so that's the building block for proteins there. And so different amino acids are used for different jobs in the body. And there are 9 amino acids that our body cannot make. There are more that our body can put together, but 9 that we have to get from our foods. And so they are termed essential amino acids. So why is protein important for me? Well, generally speaking, for everyone, if we don't get enough, it could lead to loss of muscle mass, which can lead to weakness. You can also have hair loss and experience skin and nail problems. And protein is actually an important part of our immune system. And so in order to stay healthier and have good immunity, especially in the winter months these days, it is important to focus on that. And while this isn't the only reason people might deal with fluid buildup or swelling in their extremities, a lack of protein certainly can be a causative factor there. Now, for people who are on weight loss medications, which generally means fewer calories, then the protein, in my opinion, becomes even more important. Because with weight loss, as much as we would love it to be just fat loss, it isn't. There can be loss of muscle mass as well. So to prevent excess muscle mass loss, you need to make sure you're getting in enough protein and also incorporate exercise. And if we're thinking in terms of long-term goals, muscle helps burn calories. And speaking of exercise, I did put in the side there, exercise info found on pages 20 through 22. I'm referring to the booklet that you likely got when you started with Premier Weight Loss. So those are the pages where you can reference that. How much protein do you need? Well, it does depend on the individual. We do have some starting recommendations, but they can be definitely individualized. But up to about 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight is what we're looking at, or 0.7 grams per pound. Some good starting recommendations that you'll probably see on page 6 are for men about 120 grams and for women 90 grams per day. One thing that is important is you do want to try and space it out. It's likely much more beneficial than to try and get in 120 grams all at once. Probably not going to really be maximally beneficial that way. So that's why we do encourage to space it out. Now, where can I find protein? Well, of course, whole food sources are probably what's most obvious to most of us. So animal-based are the very clear ones: meat, poultry, fish, seafood, dairy, and eggs. But plant-based sources of protein are also very valid. In fact, since plants do contain fiber and are naturally lower in fat, they can be healthy for not just vegans, vegetarians, but I'm sure you've heard of meatless Mondays as sort of a trend going on. It's an excellent thing to add into your regimen. And so you can get it from beans, peas, soy, and also nuts, nut butters, and even grains or pseudo grains, which is what quinoa is considered. But remember, quality does matter, as we mentioned at the very beginning. So you do want to limit breaded and fried as the versions of these types of protein. But where else can you find protein if not from these basic sources? Well, supplements. I'm sure you've heard about them, read about them, you might even be using some. So supplements or meal replacements, they can be found as powders that you add, protein bars, and also drinks. I think for many people, it can be a useful tool, especially if you tend to feel full quickly, or say you just didn't get enough protein at a meal in one of your days. Also, if you do work out, muscle recovery is very important to do to make sure you can maintain that muscle mass. So having something with protein in it shortly after working out, usually within 20 minutes, 30 minutes afterwards, that can help if you have a protein-based supplement or meal replacement. However, there are different types of bars you'll see out there, and they will all claim protein. So you do want to aim for about 15 to 40 grams of protein per serving. And on page 9 of your booklet, you will see guidelines on sugar, fiber, and calorie content as well. And real quickly, because it might not be clear, protein supplements, their primary focus is on the protein content. They don't really consider other nutrients, whereas meal replacements tend to include also fat, carbs, vitamin, mineral blends. So there is a difference there. With the discussion of supplements, this is an area that's a bit more hard to navigate, I would say, than the regular foods that we're also used to eating. Yeah, I'm sure if you've gone down the grocery store aisles or wherever, you'll see various types offered, such as whey or casein, which are both dairy-based. You'll see collagen, bone broths, egg whites, and then, of course, plant-based proteins like pea and soy or hemp. And for the more daring among us, even cricket protein, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend that one. You'll also probably see different terminology on either in advertisements or on the actual labels, which I will define in more detail in the following slide, but I'm sure you've seen concentrate, isolate, all these types of buzzwords that may not mean a whole lot and might get a little bit lost to try and figure out what they mean. Or you'll hear about BCAA, branched chain amino acids, which are essentially the 3 amino acids I have listed underneath. They are branched in their chemical structure. Also, they tend to, those specific amino acids, they tend to help with muscle building and help prevent muscle breakdown during exercise. So you'll see those tend to be pretty popular among athletes and bodybuilders. Something I will note before we move on to all the definitions, though, let the buyer beware. Supplements are not regulated the same way that food or medicine is. And so you want to make sure that you buy reliable and trustworthy brands. If you do have a question about a brand, please feel free to ask me or ask any one of the providers at Premier Weight Loss, and be happy to look it up. So moving on, in case you want to take a screenshot of this so you can have these definitions readily available, we talk about the terminology a little more defined. So say you see a protein concentrate. Well, literally it concentrates the protein source by removing water and other components. Although I would like to mention that if you're using, say, a whey concentrate, it is going to still contain some lactose. So I think that's important to mention. Whereas isolate, if we're moving down the line there, it isolates the protein even further by removing much of the extras, such as fat and lactose. You will want to double check on all that. There are many isolates that are perfectly fine for people who are lactose intolerant, but again, buyer beware, you do want to double check on all of those. And then finally, hydrolysate. So this is actually where the protein is broken down or pre-digested into smaller parts. So that can make it more easily absorbed by the body. Really though, they're all valid, and ultimately, as you can see in the right, one of the biggest deciding factors for many people is simply the cost. Also, when we're talking about complete versus incomplete proteins, you might see it on the label for these types of protein supplements, but it counts for food too. A complete protein is one that contains sufficient amounts of all 9 essential amino acids, the ones that I mentioned further that your body can't make. Of course, you'll see that generally being a complete protein in animal sources, except collagen, interestingly enough, and some plant-based sources. Quinoa and soy are 2 of the main sources that you can see are considered complete proteins. An incomplete protein, of course, is one that is inadequate or completely lacks one of those 9 essential amino acids. This really isn't much to worry about. If you're eating a variety of foods, you will likely get in all of your essential amino acids. So don't avoid incomplete proteins just because it's titled as such. So, as promised, we're keeping it short to open up for your questions, but putting it together, protein. It is vital for our body's health and maintenance, and definitely a priority while we're trying to lose weight. We discussed the variety of foods that you can find with animal, plant-based sources, but be mindful that supplements can be a helpful and valid tool. And when in doubt about any of this or any other nutrition-related aspects, ask. And so, for the grand finale, of course, I will open this up to questions and answers. And let me see if I can open this to make that work. And we see some already coming through here. All right, so the first question I see here is, if I haven't been making it to the gym much, but have been doing better on my diet, is protein still important? That's actually a great question, because I think sometimes it's common. In fact, I get this question a lot where, well, if I'm not going to the gym, if I'm not trying to build muscle, do I still need protein? The answer is yes, because again, as you are doing fewer calories, then you are sort of almost concentrating the calories that you are using for the day-to-day. And so as you're losing weight, you still want to make sure that you're getting enough protein to help maintain your muscle mass. Even if you're not trying to build, the simple maintenance is still very important to do. But that's a good question, because that's very valid, and some people have questions about that. Let's see, I don't see that there are any more open questions at the moment. I'm certainly going to wait and see. I'll also end the slideshow so you can have my face here for you. Stop sharing. Okay. Oh, yes. Oh, I see one question coming up. And then for anybody else who might have some questions, there is the Q&A. And remember, if you ask, people can see your name unless you do select the anonymous option. So please feel free to submit. Okay, there's a few more coming up here. Let me get my mouse here to cooperate. Okay. How can you tell complete and incomplete proteins on packaging? Ooh, so to be clear on some of that. So complete and incomplete proteins may sometimes be a marketing tool, of course, so especially if they say this is a complete protein for you. But in general packaging, say you were just shopping and you saw pea protein. And of course, I'm going to pick one of the more conflicting ones, because you'll see different people saying whether or not pea protein is complete or incomplete. It's a bit lacking in methionine and cysteine, but there are some people who claim that it's still in enough amounts. Good. But anyway, more to your point, you'll know that whey protein, casein protein, those are considered complete. So really any animal source, animal-based protein, those are complete. I did mention collagen as an exception because it is lacking in tryptophan, but otherwise, that's the only thing it's lacking in. As far as plant-based proteins go, the ones that you can reliably determine are complete proteins are soy and quinoa. Those are the two main ones that you could say these are complete. I hope if there's any questions about that though, please let me know. Am I familiar with Body Health Perfect Amino tablets? I've heard folks recommend to take this in the past. Thoughts? You know, I haven't heard of that one in particular, and I would love to get an answer back to you in due time. I'm going to actually write that down because I will be happy to submit that. I will also try and look some of that information up while I'm answering some other questions. So thank you for your question, because there is always something new coming out, and try as hard as I try to keep up with all of it, there's always a new one coming out. So thank you for sharing, because I'm going to look that up and perchance get back to you tonight, but might have to get back to you a little bit later. Moving to the next one just quickly here, I often drink more than one protein shake per day to get enough protein. Is this an okay practice? It depends on the type of protein shake that we're looking at. So we talked about protein supplements and meal replacements, right? So if the protein shake is something, say, like, I'm trying to think of one that's pretty common, Premier Protein, I think some people hear about, or if there's one that you bought from Premier Weight Loss, because you do want to at least make sure that we're being mindful of the sugar and fiber content. When it is considering meal replacement, then doing that is usually more than fine. Of course, as a dietitian, we always want to say whole foods are the way to go, but truly meal replacements, they do have their place, especially when we're doing fewer calories. Now, if you're doing protein shakes, not necessarily to replace a whole meal, but to just get in enough protein, it does depend on the calories at that point. So you do want to make sure that if you are not replacing a meal, but just trying to supplement the protein that you're consuming, that the calorie level is lower. So you want to keep it more in the 100 calorie range versus, say, perhaps 250, 300 higher. So that's a very good question though, because depending on the type, that can affect whether or not that will be the best choice. And as we wait to see if any more Q&A come on, I will start doing a little bit of research. These are all excellent, and if anybody would like extra details on something they've asked, or since so many of my answers are, it depends, feel free to clarify anything as well. Very interesting, by the way, on the perfect amino. They are tablets. It looks like it's supposed to provide all the amino acids. I do intend, so that I don't want anyone to sit here in radio silence. I do intend to research this, because if there is anything valid to it, I want to make sure to let you know. Are there any other questions that are popping up or any clarification points that people would be interested in? Well, as I wait for some other questions to pop up at the moment, something I'll mention, since again, we're talking about the perfect amino tablets. Something I do with a lot of supplements is, because it's actually something I'm kind of passionate about, is that I am subscribed to, excuse me, I'm subscribed to a company that does third-party testing of supplements. It's called Consumer Lab. There are a few others that do it as well. And so I'm going to look into it to try and find an answer on that perfect amino. And let's see, okay, I missed the first few minutes. Any chance you can reiterate the first few slides? Absolutely, it would be my pleasure. Let's see if I can open it up again so that I can share for you to see. And of course, if anybody else is wanting to see them as well, while I get technology to cooperate for me. Okay, so for Debbie, talked about the quality of your calories mattering. Our main topics were what it is, why it's important, how much you need, where you can find it. So first topic, the first slide, was how protein is one of the big three nutrients. The other ones are fat and carbohydrates. Some people also like to say that macronutrient water is important to think about. And it is a necessary part of our bodies. It makes up really all parts, and it's necessary for us to function. But it can be used for energy. And I'll emphasize this a little bit more just in case anybody is curious. What I mean by that is protein does have caloric content. I'm sure you've noticed, but it does have caloric content. And so if it's not used toward muscle building, it can be used and stored ultimately as fat. And it can be burned as well, which is why I talked about it being important, because you will burn some muscle, you will burn some protein while losing weight. Protein itself is made up of amino acids, and the amino acids have different jobs throughout the body. And there are 9 that our body can't make. So we have to get from the food we eat. So those are the essential amino acids. We talked about the importance because as you're losing weight, you don't want to lose muscle. And of course, anybody who's not getting enough protein will see muscle mass go down if we're really deficient. And that can lead to weakness and also having a variety of other health problems, hair, skin, and nail problems. I don't want to say immune deficiency, but it is a part of your immune health. And if you are deficient in protein, you will see some fluid buildup and potentially some swelling in your extremities. It's not the only reason that can happen, but it is a reason. And so when you are losing weight, likely eating fewer calories, then those quality of calories are, I think, almost doubly important, because as you're losing weight, even if you're eating the right amount of protein, there will be some muscle loss involved with the fat loss, but we want to prevent excess losses, unnecessary muscle mass losses. So that's why you want to get in enough protein, even without exercise. Exercise can help prevent excess loss and can even help build muscle, but you want to make sure that you're getting in enough to prevent that as well. And with muscle, then you're going to be burning calories long-term. And as I am not an exercise physiologist or a personal trainer, I do reference exercise info in your booklet that you can find. It was the booklet that you got from Premier Weight Loss. How much do you need? It is very dependent on the person. You can go up to 1.5 grams per kilogram or about 0.7 grams per pound. And again, I'm just referencing page 6 here from the booklet because that's where the good starting recommendations of 90 grams a day for women or 120 grams per day for men. And then ideally, we'd like to space it out. You want to have it throughout the day, maximize the absorption and the utilization of your protein. Eating a whole bunch at once, you're probably not going to see that utilization in the same way. And some of it will probably just be stored for energy later. Talked about where you can find it. So we talked about the animal-based sources of food, animal-based sources of protein, as well as the plant-based sources of protein. And that includes grains, pseudo-grains, seitan. If you are vegetarian and vegan, you'll see that. It's a type of gluten that's been prepared. But try not to get the breaded and fried versions of these types of protein. And then we were talking about supplements and meal replacements, such as powders, bars, and drinks. And as I mentioned, it can be a very useful tool if you tend to feel full quickly. If you didn't get enough protein in a meal in a day, and also for muscle recovery after a workout. On page 9, it does talk about guidelines for sugar, fiber, and calorie content. And you do want to try and aim for 15 to 40 grams. This is where I started talking about the sea of supplements, how you'll find different terminology. And also one of the reasons why I'm holding on to this question about the perfect amino tablets is this is the exact kind of question I would love to have when we're talking about what supplement to pick. And so you want to buy reliable and trustworthy brands because also food is a business, and with supplements, even more so, it's I believe a $1 billion industry because they can make it sound attractive and fun. You can get influencers involved. And so you want to make sure that you're still buying something that's trustworthy, that it contains what it says it has, something that you're not wasting money on. So that's what I find very important there. Then this was the full definition. I'll leave this up a bit longer in case anyone didn't have a chance to take a screenshot if they'd like to have that as a fuller definition for all of those items. And actually, I'll probably leave it up here because the next one is just a summary of everything we went through. Does anyone have any questions again? And actually, I will say to the anonymous attendee who had that fantastic question, we will, if you have a chance to let our staff know separately away from this discussion, just so that you don't have to publish your contact information out there for everyone to see. If you can let someone on the staff know your contact information, or we can locate you, I will get back to you on that for information on that specific question, because I would love to make sure to answer it. And you will not be the last person to ask that specific question. So I appreciate that. Let's see here. Well, let's see, we're at half past the hour. I'm happy to be here and answer any other questions that you may have. Regardless, I would like to thank everyone for attending this first session. I hope you all got something out of it, and I hope to see some of you in the future at some of our subsequent sessions. There will be different topics presented, and you should see a few of them so you'll know which ones you may or may not want to sign up for in advance. But beyond that, let's see, I will stop sharing now, I think. Beyond this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being here. And if there is any time that you would ever want to work with me, that is also an option for one-on-one discussions. Just let the staff at Premier Weight Loss know, and we can get that scheduled as well. And with that, I don't have much else to add on that. And if no one else has any questions, then this was a delight. And I hope you all have a lovely night and stay warm out there. And if you have questions that you want to ask offline, you can certainly let us know, and the staff will get back to me, I'm sure. Hope everyone has a lovely evening. Thank you.